thought this was a really this was a great contribution as well. Think about, folks, for a second how PC gaming has changed. And I got this full on this week when I thought, and I had a very, very long and difficult scheduled week, which is one of the reasons why the Ringer's coming out a little bit late. Just a jam-packed week, folks. But one of the things I thought about doing was, you always want to try to get those rewards for yourself as you're working through your week, that you can, okay, I can get to this point and I can go reward myself. Well, as some of you know, Heroes 6, or what do they call it now? Might and Magic 6 Heroes or something like that, whatever the hell they're calling it these days. The point is, it's Heroes of Might and Magic 6, a game that I have talked about many, many, many times on the Weekly Ringer that I've been very excited about. It launched, and it launched to not a whole lot of fanfare because I realized it is kind of a niche game. However, I thought, what would be really cool? I would love to go out and get this game. So I hit up some stores. I went to GameStop. I went to the big box stores, as it were, and I guess I should not have been surprised. I should not have been surprised, guys, and you know this, but none of them had the game. None of them had the game. None of them. The only way I could get the game was to basically go either download it off of Amazon or download it from one of the Steam platforms or Steam-like platforms, or to just buy it online, right? And that, that I think shows how the whole cloud mentality has completely and totally changed how we download and consume content. Now, what does this have to do with mobile gaming? It has everything to do with it, because I think if you think about for a minute what your ideal mobile gaming platform might look like. This is the challenge I was really issuing for you guys this week. All right? Now, if we think about that for a minute, I think you come up with a lot of different answers. And I will be completely honest with you in saying that I don't think any of the current mobile platforms, handheld, mobile, otherwise, meet the demands of what I'm thinking about. Because what I'm thinking about is the capability to, play games with no depth, casual games, right? On a casual basis while I'm sitting there waiting for, my car to get serviced, or the whatever else you wait on, the train or whatever it is, right? But I also want to be able to have those kinds of in-depth experiences where I can play games that do have some real depth to them. They are works of art video games that are kind of AAA titles just made for mobile platforms. And I want to be able to do both those things on the same platform. And I want to be able to do it in such a way that any progress I make on my mobile platform, that any of the things that I do are things that I can go back, and when I get home, I can just sit down, pull out the controller, and continue on my home gaming console, or at least before we say console, let's just talk about, I want to be able to play it at home on something else, like a TV, in what we would consider a traditional console gaming market. That to me sounds like something I would like to do. I'd like to be able to do both of those things. I don't want to go download one for one and one for the other and then kind of have two experiences on both, right? I want to be able to basically seamlessly link those things together. I don't know that anybody really has that vision yet. I know that the PlayStation Vita is definitely looking toward that kind of progress, right? The PlayStation Vita is a move to try to accomplish just that. But, and it's a big but, it's not the cloud that Astoli is talking about. The idea that we really can continuously have kind of that gaming portfolio out there that we can always plug into and always kind of disconnect from if we don't want to have it there, connect into if we want it there. And I think that particular piece of the puzzle, regardless of whether you're using mobile or whether you're using home-based, right, living room-based kind of console systems, or whatever you're using, the cloud is going to be absolutely of pivotal importance to that. There are obviously a lot of opinions there. That could be a Weekly Ringer in and of itself. I've already taken a lot of time to talk about it. But let's move on to the next one. All great contributions. Lenoir basically said out and out, look, there is no future for these guys in the mobile gaming market because they satisfy something different, right? They satisfy the gamer market only, which is a niche. I know that many of you are part of that niche. In fact, I would hope to some degree All of you are, because because you're a part of this website here, right? But it is a niche, folks. That's just the way that it is, right? So, in other words, one of the reasons we see diminishing numbers and percentages of mobile gaming based on the handhelds for some of the traditional players is because there are so many more players that never would have been a part of that niche otherwise that download Angry Birds onto their phone, right? That get some of the hot, cool apps. It's so true. And I'll tell you what, I can't disagree with that. I think... Okay, so I asked this question. I'm trying not to tip my hand here a little bit, but I asked this question because I think it is beyond statistical significance to say that we can demonstrate that these guys' chokeholds, Nintendo and Sony's chokehold on mobile gaming, is not what it used to be. But that being said, I think Lenoir points to an interesting idea, and that is that there's so many more people. They focus just on that market space, and that market space is probably about the same size, maybe even growing. But there's so much more from everybody else that it's huge, right? There's so many more people gaming these days, so many more people taking those casual games. It is huge. So it's worth pointing out that maybe just the market is so much bigger, and that Sony and Nintendo are going to be fine, because moving down 5-10 years, the niche is going to stay the same. The niche could even grow while mobile gaming is growing the way that it is. DTX 180 talked about that more and more people will flock to mobile gaming, which I couldn't agree with more. I think that's a fantastic... I think that's exactly the point that Lenoir is starting, that Estoli is starting. I think that is the exclamation point. We have gotten to a point where more and more people will be flocking to mobile gaming, which could be casual or could be more in-depth, right? I have to say, guys, I was really impressed. Someone mentioned Street Fighter for iOS. Now, I don't have an iPhone, but one of my friends does, and he said, hey, why don't you play some Street Fighter 2 on iOS? And I have to tell you guys, it was damned impressive. Now, was it the same kind of control that one might expect to get at an arcade? The same kind of control that one might expect to get on a home console with a controller? No, it wasn't. But it was damn good, and I think it represents a significant step forward. And it's not difficult to imagine that something like the PlayStation Vita, which tries to really combine all of that together, could be the system that gets it right. But to DTX 180's point, more and more people will be flocking to these things, and not along the lines of the DS or the PSP. They're going to be flocking in ways to where they can have a singular device that can handle everything they need to do. Why buy two? Someone, I forget who said it, but someone basically put it out there. Why would I spend $300 on a cell phone that I expect to keep hopefully for a little while, and then go spend $200 or $300 on a gaming console? It almost doesn't make any sense. And I'll be honest with you guys, I think I see it diminishing over the course of time. I haven't played my DS seriously in a long time. It's not because I'm not places where I couldn't play the DS. I've gone on road trips, things like that. It's not for me anymore. It's so much easier just to pull out the old phone and just start pounding through some casual games, or pounding through some puzzle kind of games, or something that's a little bit different, right? So good points. Alberto Me. Nintendo needs a new approach. This is getting to where I really wanted to go with this. I could not agree more. Think of the way that Nintendo kind of changed gaming with the Wii, based on the kind of control differentials and the idea of really trying to think outside the box, delivering similar experiences I shouldn't say that, similar software that have new experiences. That's what I'm really trying to say. With the Wiimote apparatus, so on and so forth, dancing around your living room, throwing nunchucks at the TV, right? So Alberto Me's point, which is well taken, is that Nintendo or PlayStation, whoever really wants to pick up the mantelpiece, is really going to have to rethink the entirety of their execution. And I could not be in agreement more. There needs to be a new approach. And I'm not sure, as many of you said, and again, many of you brought this to my attention, correctly, I think. Nintendo is not known for its novel approach when it comes to mobile gaming. They like to ride the coattails of their executed platforms to this point. They like to carry on the status quo and keep delivering similar software and similar characters, similar games with new experiences, new apparatus. And they really haven't done that. Regardless of what you think the survey that got mentioned several times really says, here's what I want you to really think about. You yourself, be honest with yourself. When was the last time you saw a 3D game and you said, man, this is fantastic. This is going to change the way that I think about video gaming. No, none of you did. You might have thought about it as a fantastic enhancement. And when I used the 3DS as a non-believer at PAX East this year, I absolutely became a believer in certain kinds of concepts. The idea of being able to combine it and move around something in three-dimensional space, fantastic idea. But does that change the way that I think about Assassin's Creed? Does that change the way I think about Halo? Does that make me want to run out and get my 3D glasses to be able to enjoy the 3D on my TV? No. No, it doesn't. It doesn't want to make me do any of those things, because I think at the end of the day, the fact that I can use no controller and have a great time playing games with something like Kinect so far trumps the idea that I can play 3D on a DS. What I think is absolutely the case, and this was also mentioned, is that the 3DS is also a really high horsepower version of the DS. And if you kind of market it that way, I think it looks a little bit different. But Nintendo is trying to fake that new approach, because I don't think 3D is a new approach. I think it is a status quo kind of spin of what is already popular. I also want to say this. Many of you looked at this the idea that the 3DS has sold more than the original DS did in 2004 in its first year. And many of you cited this as a means to say, hey, maybe the launch wasn't so bad. Guys, no, stop. The launch was terrible. Nintendo came out with a public apology saying, we have failed the community, we have failed this great company, this launch has been one of the worst we've ever had. Okay, I didn't make that up, guys. That happened, right? So any of you that want to spin this in any way you want to for Nintendo, don't try, right? Remember, the DS was horrendously unpopular. The DS Fat. Not the DS Lite, not the DSi, right? The DS Fat, that boy. How many of you own one of those? Let's just ask that right now, right? I'm guessing that it's not a whole lot. The reason why is because it was a ridiculously poor executed platform. The DS Lite, however, as the DS got a little bit older, a few years later, only 2 or 3 years later, that's when the DS blew up. The DS became a huge, huge platform for Nintendo. One that, when the DS came out, the sales expectations were low. That's the point. When the 3DS came out, the sales expectations were similarly based on, I think, what they would consider a realistic product launch, and they didn't even come close. That is important to understand. So before we get down the road to say, hey, the 3DS really isn't that bad, or the launch hasn't been that bad. Forget the technology. I think the technology is actually really good. No, guys. There's no way you can spin this. Nintendo came out and said, this is a failed launch for us, right? It is very, very bad. That is why, again, I want you guys to think. Think about all those factors together. It's no coincidence that people are playing maybe fewer and fewer handheld games and more mobile games, quote unquote, and that it's happening at the same time, in parallel with the fact that Nintendo releases a platform that doesn't come near to meeting sales expectations and have to immediately drop the price on it in order to make the kind of dent that they wanted to make. Not the launch they were looking for, and I think it does signify something a lot different. All right. Ninto 55 talked about handhelds and home consoles are coming to a similar end. This is an interesting concept, and that there might not be a future. Maybe the question should be broader, right? And I've already been talking for 30 minutes about this, so if it's broader, I don't imagine how the weekly Wringer will be an hour and a half long. The point is, I think there's merit to this. Many of you are going to hate me for that. I think there's merit to this idea. I think there's merit to the idea that that home consoles are being deprecated at the